Hi, I'm Jessica. I'm the CEO of Spot. Spot is a tool that helps people anonymously document and report incidents of workplace harassment, discrimination, unfair treatment, inappropriate behavior, bullying, misconduct, etc. We know there are many things that can go wrong in workplaces. And we are so proud to be partnered with the Yukon Human Rights Commission to offer a customized version of Spot for citizens of the Yukon to report workplace incidents. Unfortunately, you're not going to see me live today because I am going to have a baby at any minute. But what I would like to do is to walk you through the experience of reporting something with Spot, just to give you a better sense of how the commission and how the Yukon is approaching really tackling incidents of workplace harassment. So in order to get to Spot, you can find it from the Yukon Human Rights Commission's website. So in their resources section, if you went to 24/7 online reporting, you can find Spot there. You can also always go to talktospot.com/find and type in Yukon Human Rights Commission in order to get to the Yukon's instance of Spot. So one of the things that we are always very clear about is that this app is hosted by Spot and isn't part of the Yukon Human Rights Commission's intranet or website. So Spot is really acting as a third party to give people a safe way to document and report incidents. We do offer Spot in both English and French, so you can continue in whichever language is the most comfortable for you. So let's continue with English for now. On this page, you can find not only the entry point to walk through the reporting flow, but you can also find answers to frequently asked questions. So what will the commission do with your report? Can you stay anonymous when you report? What counts as inappropriate behavior? The idea here is that we want you to feel like you have all of the information you need to understand the process and to feel comfortable going ahead, documenting, and perhaps reporting something. So once you do feel like you have all the information you need, you can start the documentation process. One of the first things that we tell people is that when they interact with Spot, they're talking to a bot, not a human. The reason for this is that talking to humans about these kinds of issues can be very, very difficult, and it can be a barrier to actually speaking up about things. So, even if you're talking to a very warm and empathetic human, you can still feel judged or embarrassed when you're talking about incidents. I think that the sketch did a really good job of illustrating how hard it can be to talk about these things, even to your significant other or your partner or a good friend, right? There's a lot of gray area in these things. The incidents that the sketch outlines are very layered and nuanced, right? There's a lot of as they say, ins and outs happening in those scenarios. And it makes it really difficult to talk to humans in our lives about them. So what we have done with Spot is to create a machine that will talk you through an incident and help you create a thorough and accurate account of it without you having to talk to a human at first. And no one will see what you discuss with Spot in this chat until you decide to submit a report. So this is completely private. We do follow best practice interview techniques to help you collect all of the details and minutia of events as thoroughly and accurately as possible. So we do walk you through kind of the basics, including when things happened, where they happened, and who was involved, if you're willing to share that. So what we're going to do is to kind of walk through the incident that Sean experienced closest to the end of the sketch. And the reason we're doing that is because we really try to encourage contemporaneous reporting with Spot. So reporting something and documenting it as early as possible so that you're recording it when the incident and the details of the incident are still really fresh in your mind. So even though what we saw with Sean was definitely, and with really all of the scenarios in the sketch, was really a pattern of behavior rather than one single explosive incident. Let's have Sean talk through that incident that happened towards the end. And let's say that in this process, Sean decides that yes, they do want to stay anonymous. Spot asks Sean to provide specifics about when the incident happened, and in this case, and really in the best case scenario, is that you're reporting something that happened very recently. So in Sean's case, it was earlier today. When Spot asks about where the incident happened, Sean might say something like, behind the pastry shop where employees gather to talk and take breaks. Yes, the incident did occur in Yukon. So Spot then asks Sean to tell more about the people involved. And this step is obviously completely optional because giving information about other people might identify Sean. So let's say that in this case, they decide they do actually want to mention Jody, who is a coworker, and they want to indicate that Jody is the cause of the incident. So the other options here, you can always report as a witness. You can report people who took part in something or who observed it, who other witnesses who were around, or simply people who you know have overheard the incident or know that it happened. And let's say that Sean wants to add a little bit more context here. So Jody has consistently misgendered me over the last couple of months. So you can add as many people as you like, or you can decide after you add one person, okay, I'm done. So Spot will then ask Sean to talk about what happened in their own words. The idea here is to help Sean get as many details down as they can remember. So let's say that, Sean was in the donut shop. So they might write something like, we were having issues at work all day and I couldn't find any of the employees. I went out back and they were all hanging out talking about me as quote unquote it. It needs to relax. It needs to be nicer. So this is a fairly concise version of what happened towards the end of the sketch with Sean. And in real life, you might want to take a little bit more time and really walk through everything that happened or everything that you can remember. The next thing that Spot does is to ask about emotional impact, because that is extremely important for understanding kind of the breadth of harassment and discrimination. And so in this case, let's say that Sean maybe felt humiliated and embarrassed and angry. Spot does ask you to select the emotion that best summarizes how the incident made you feel as it was happening. And let's say that Sean looks at this list and realizes, actually, what I felt was really isolated from all of my coworkers. Spot does ask you to think about how the incident made you feel after it happened. We're going to skip this part because it just happened earlier that day, so maybe Sean hasn't really had time to process yet. In this case, let's say that Sean does in fact think that what happened could be harassment or discrimination. Harassment and discrimination are fairly complicated legal concepts. They do relate to particular characteristics such as age, race, gender identity, sexual orientation. Spot does ask you, and of course you can always skip this, to add any characteristics that you believe were a factor in why you experienced unfavorable treatment. So in Sean's case, let's say that they look at this list and they say, this is mostly about gender identity and gender expression. They might add a comment saying that I have been clear that my pronouns are they, them. And let's say that Sean doesn't need to add another characteristic, but we do ask Sean, what could be done to prevent this in the future? This can really help people have a sense of what tangible thing would lead to a feeling of resolution, or what tangible thing would really help improve the situation so that they don't experience it again and so that others don't have to experience it either. And in Sean's case, this might be something like clear messaging from leadership such as Jody, right? We saw how distracted Jody was in the sketch. Clear messaging from leadership that misgendering and dehumanizing coworkers is unacceptable. And that clear messaging, maybe that involves better manager training as well. If Sean had any, for example, screenshots of any kind of files really that are related to this incident. So for example, screenshots of text messages or emails, things that they had received that kind of gave examples of how they were misgendered or how they were referred to as it in a dehumanizing way. They could decide to upload those files here. If they don't have any files or they're just not comfortable sharing them, they can obviously skip this section. Spot does ask for a title for the incident. And let's say that Sean decides that their title is going to be misgendering and dehumanizing behavior. Obviously, you can always talk in person to staff at the Yukon Human Rights Commission. You don't have to use Spot. You can also do a combination of these two things. So you could choose to document an incident in Spot and then talk directly to someone at the commission. But it is, of course, important to keep track of your report so that if you do talk to people at the commission, it's easy to trace. So the next thing that we do after asking the person and all the details about what happened and kind of guiding them through documenting the incident is to ask them to review and edit their responses. We do this because when you're chatting with a bot, the first thing that you respond may not be the thing that you want actually on the record. So this is your chance to kind of go back, review everything that you responded to with the bot and kind of change anything, right? Maybe you decide that, this detail might give away your identity and therefore you want to edit it out. Maybe in this case, you decide, you know what, I've had enough of this. I actually don't want to stay anonymous. I want to come forward. I'm willing to come forward. You can change those responses here and you can edit anything that you wrote. So in Sean's case, let's say that they decided after going through this process that maybe they don't want to stay anonymous. This does happen sometimes, although of course staying anonymous is always totally fine. Sean might go down here and say, yes, I'm willing to provide some details. And they can go ahead and add those. Once they're done reviewing all of their responses, the next thing that happens is that Spot will ask you for an email address. So the commission cannot see this email address unless you decide to disclose it. Spot uses this email address in order to communicate with you, make sure that you have a link to the document that you created, and also to pass on any communication from the Yukon Human Rights Commission to you. So Spot acts as a third party through which the commission can communicate with you and ask follow-up questions, conduct investigations, even if you choose to stay anonymous the entire time. Once you've entered the email address, we take you to a report page. This report has not been submitted yet. You can choose to submit it immediately, or you can sit on it for a while. Sometimes, you're glad to have documented these things. It feels really good to kind of get them in a safe place where they're saved, but you're not quite ready to submit a report yet. If like Sean, you're dealing with patterns of behavior, you can add additional incidents to reports to kind of have a paper trail of things that happen that are all related to one another. Sometimes an incident happens to us at work and our immediate response is, I actually don't know how big a deal this is. We saw some of that in the scenarios in the sketch. And when it becomes a pattern, it sometimes becomes a lot clearer that it really is a real problem. And so having a cumulative documentation of smaller incidents that do indicate a larger problematic pattern of behavior can be very helpful. So one of the things that you can do with Spot is to save this initial report and then come back to it and add incidents as they happen. And of course, you can also submit the report immediately. And then the Human Rights Commission will use Spot as a third party, if you've chosen to stay anonymous, to communicate with you about the incident and to kind of help investigate and try to resolve what happened or work with you towards resolution. That is about it. I'm really glad to have gotten the chance to show you a little bit about how Spot works. We hope that this makes you feel a little bit more comfortable and safer recording workplace incidents that happen in Yukon. And you can always reach us to ask any questions or to learn more about how the product works. You can reach us directly at hello@talktospot.com. And I want to thank the Commission for having us today and to all of you for listening. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much, Jessica, for that excellent overview. I think that was a great demonstration of what this tool can do. We're excited to be able to provide this tool in partnership with Spot to all Yukoners. We hope that it's really valuable. People seem to be using it on a regular basis. And if you have any questions, now's a great time to ask. You've got myself here. I'm the information officer at the Commission. We've also got Daniel on the line. He's a co-founder of Spot, and I'll let him introduce himself here.
Yes, hello, I'm Daniel. I'm one of the co-founders of Spot, responsible for the product. I'm here today for Jessica. She's expecting a baby, so yeah, trying to answer all the questions.
For sure. And just before we get into Spot, a reminder, if you have any questions, please put them up, send them through to our moderators. They'll send them in to us. But I think the word cloud from the Guandoc Theater piece might have shown just a little bit for a short period of time there. But it is up in our resources if you missed that. This is a fabulous word cloud that was generated from answers that people responding to the question, what would help you report? Basically, what are the barriers that you see? What could be removed that would help you report an instance of workplace sexual harassment? And so that's up in the resources section of the app. If you can't find it, give us a call, 667-6226, and we'll help you navigate there. But we'll be definitely looking at that and thinking about that as we move forward in our project over the next couple of years here, to guide us in terms of what people are seeing as barriers and how we might be able to partner with other organizations to create some solutions to that here in Yukon. And one of the solutions, one of the barriers that we've heard about is that there can be a lot of stigma attached to reporting something like sexual harassment in the workplace, and it can be really tough to talk to someone about that because of that perceived stigma. And so Spot was something that seemed to be a potential solution to that. Daniel, do you want to talk a little bit about the development of Spot and some of the ethos behind creating this and some of the things this was meant to fix?
Yes, definitely. I think one of the biggest problems that we saw early on is that people were afraid of speaking up and still are afraid, even if they're using Spot. It's an emotional process to kind of open up about something that has happened to you. And we know that it is particularly difficult to speak to another human about it. So for us, it was important to provide something that is a safe space for people to go to, where they can talk through what has happened to them. And for us, it was important that it isn't with another human, but with a machine, with a computer, to give you that safe space, to kind of reflect on your thoughts, to kind of guide you through everything that may have happened and to document it.
Absolutely. So I see a couple questions coming in here. First one, can Spot be used with any kind of harassment? Absolutely. Obviously, we have developed this tool kind of through a human rights lens based on the legislation here in Yukon. So there's some things that are going to be highlighted a little bit more than others in terms of just types of discrimination. But absolutely, you can use this to document any kind of harassment. And hopefully it's really good at helping you get your thoughts down, your experiences down. And then I'll talk a little bit about what that looks like on our end. If you do decide to submit that to the Yukon Human Rights Commission, what we see on our end is the report that you send in. If you've chosen to stay anonymous, we won't see your name, we won't see your email address, but we can reply to you through Spot. So Spot acts as kind of an intermediary where we send a reply there and then it gets bounced to you. So we never actually see that email address if you don't want us to. And the kinds of responses that we can have, we can help answer some questions, perhaps. We can provide legal information about the issue you're having. We can perhaps refer you to another organization if it may not properly fit within the Yukon Human Rights Act. Or we can send you a Yukon Human Rights complaint form so that you can file a human rights complaint with us. So I'm going to touch on the second question here. Is creating Spot report the same as submitting a human rights complaint? And no, it is not. Something that I want to be really clear about. Spot is a great tool. It's meant to be able to provide you a way to document your experiences and then use that documentation in whatever process you decide is right for you. That could be a human rights complaint process. That could be a criminal process. That could just be an internal process in your workplace. That's up to you. And we hope that it gives you the time to write everything down and then save it until you're ready to go through with the process. But a human rights complaint is different. To file a human rights complaint, you have to fill out a complaint form. You can download that off of our website or come talk to us at the commission. We can give you one of those, but it is a different thing. You will not be able to stay anonymous. Whoever you are complaining about is going to know who you are in order to be able to respond to the complaint. And it starts a formal process as opposed to a Spot report, which can be just for you to document the harassment or whatever your experience has been, and then keep that for yourself and use it in whatever process you like. That could be a human rights complaint or something else. Anything to add, Daniel?
No, not really. I think that explains it quite well. Maybe one little thing to just repeat. So there are basically two phases. In the first phase, it's just you and the machine, where you can kind of talk through everything, you and the computer to go through everything. And then, as Drew has mentioned, towards the end, we inform you about other steps you can take, but you can also just wait and see what is happening. So you can save your report, see how the situation is developing, and then after some time come back and submit it to the Yukon Human Rights Commission to then see what the next step is. So it's really step by step. You're always in full control about what is happening next, and then, as Drew has explained, you can level it up.
Absolutely. And I see another question there about Spot having posters that can be placed in the workplace. The commission
Yes.
has access to some of these that we can provide you. Daniel, do you have other ones if people are looking for something specific?
Yeah, I would actually recommend the one for the Yukon Human Rights Commission that is available. If you look for something else, best to get in touch with us via email, and then we see what we can do for you in terms of posters.
Absolutely.
Number 4, maybe I start with that, and Drew, you fill in the details. So as you've seen towards the end of the interview, we tell you to kind of keep your ID from the report if you wanted to make a human rights complaint later on. So you can refer back to the report ID. You can also print it out as a PDF. So that's a functionality available. Once you receive an email after you talk to Spot, you can click on a link and then you see your report before even submitting it. You can save a copy. Maybe I quickly show that in the background. So you get an idea of what that will look like. So you get an email that looks like this. You click on the link, and then you come to a page that looks like this, where you can see the ID. That will be important if you talk to the commission. You can cite that ID if you've submitted the report, because then they can kind of see where this report is in their system. You can also download it as a PDF file right here, and that will also have all your details in there. Maybe Drew, you can fill in a couple more details around what that would look like from your side.
Absolutely. As Daniel said, really important to keep track of either the title that you give your report or that ID number, because when you submit these, they're typically anonymous. We can't see who submitted it on our end. So if you come in and talk to us and say, hey, I submitted a Spot report, can you print me a copy? We're going to need to know that it actually was you who submitted that. We don't want to just give you a copy of just any Spot report. This is very private, confidential stuff. So we need to have that title or that ID or both in order to know that it actually was you who submitted it. And then we can absolutely print you a copy. We can access that if need be. So important to keep that in case you need it. Jot it down somewhere. So if you decide to file a human rights complaint, your Spot report can be used as a document that you can submit alongside that report. So alongside that complaint, when you submit a human rights complaint, part of it is writing down your experience, how you feel that you have been discriminated against. And it's quite possible that your Spot report documents a lot of those same experiences and explains that already. So instead of you writing it down again, you can sometimes use your Spot report to help to kind of be that part of it in terms of explaining your experience. It can also be a supporting document later on in the process if your human rights complaint goes as far as an investigation, then the investigator may ask you to provide documents that support your position and show the discrimination. And a Spot report can be part of that because it shows your experience at the time, right? So that's something that you can provide there.
The next question, I think, Drew, I let you take as well.
Yeah, the next one looks like it's along the lines of our process. So I'm just going to read it out. If I make a Spot report within 18 months of the alleged incident and use it in a complaint that I submit after the 18-month timeline, does that count as within the time limits of the Act? So I think what's being referred to here is for filing human rights complaint in Yukon, there is an 18-month time limit. You have to file a human rights complaint within 18 months of the alleged discrimination. So this is asking if you make a Spot report within the 18 months, but then you file a human rights complaint after the 18 months timeline, does that bring it into the time limits? The answer is very likely no. The actual complaint has to be filed within the 18 months. The Spot report is not a human rights complaint. We cannot treat it as such. You actually need to file that human rights complaint. So that's a really important timeline to know and a great question.
Great.
I'll talk a little bit maybe more about, or Daniel, maybe you can talk a little bit more about how Spot was developed. We've adapted it a bit in Yukon to be a tool that everyone in the public can access. I know that wasn't necessarily the original use of Spot. Can you speak a little bit to what the majority of use cases for Spot are that you guys see?
Yes. Very early on, we only opened this to companies that wanted to use the tool internally and give people a safe space to speak up. And so companies would then, within the HR department or leadership, would receive Spot reports, and then people could stay anonymous and then communicate with their company. But very early on, as we launched, the Commission got in touch and asked us if that is also possible to kind of do more broadly, so it's accessible to the public. And since then, we had more and more requests. So we're actually quite glad that we had this partnership with Yukon very early on, because that tended to be a need for other organizations as well. Gradually, we made it more customizable. So it's now also possible to use for a public use case, as we have in Yukon. Basically doing the same thing, still offering people a safe space to speak up, especially as it's sensitive topics. People want to stay anonymous initially. Sometimes they want to open up, sometimes they just want to remain anonymous. That's the history of the tool. I think it's a great use case as we have it in Yukon, that people can also publicly use it.
Yeah, and as it's become more customizable, we have worked with Daniel and the team at Spot to make this more applicable to Yukon and more applicable to kind of a human rights lens in terms of what's being reported and how it guides you through this process in terms of documenting things. So we went through a bit of a revamp in fall of last year and launched a new version in September. And that's the one that you'll see online now. It's now available in French. That was a big change, and we're really glad to be able to offer this in French as well now. I see a few more questions coming in. I think question number 6 there, Daniel, might be a great one for you to take on.
Yes. What if I want to delete a report that I made? So as I mentioned earlier, you receive an email, and that email is really important to kind of keep, because that has this link in there that kind of that will lead you to your report. Now, you can delete the reports if you want to. Unless it has already been submitted, then this is something where you have to email us at hello@talktospot.com, then basically tell us to delete it. At the point of submission, however, it has already been submitted to the Commission, so it would also need to be deleted from their system. So that's something that is really on a case-by-case basis, but it's very important to kind of say you own the data. So until the date of submission, if you wanted to delete it, you can delete it. After that, once you shared it, that becomes a little bit more complicated, because then there is another person basically who already has access to it. Then you would need to ask them, in this case, the Commission, as well, to delete it.
Yeah. And if anybody ever requests that, we're obviously happy to do that. It is your data. We're happy to store it. It's a safe place for it if you don't have a safe place to store it. But if you ever want it to be deleted, absolutely get in touch, and we will do so. And we can contact Spot or help you do so if you need to contact them to reach out and ask them to delete it off of their servers.
Exactly. So easiest is always hello@talktospot.com, and then you'll reach somebody there who can help you. And as Drew said, also very important for us, your data is your data. You want it to be deleted, we'll do everything possible to do that.
Yeah. Can you speak a little bit to what data is retained, Daniel?
Yes. So all the things that you tell the bot, the things that you mention in the interview, once you store them, they're stored on a server. They're encrypted, they're highly secure, so no one can easily kind of look at them. Even if they got the data, it would only be a mumbo jumbo that they couldn't read. But that's basically the data that is being stored. So you always have access to it in case, I don't know, you lost your phone or anything else. It is there, but you're the owner of that data and kind of decide what happens with that data.
I see a few more questions coming in. Can I download an app for Spot? At this point, I'm not aware of an app for Spot. Is that correct, Daniel? It is browser-based only at this point?
Yes, so we decided against an app just because accessibility reasons. We wanted this to be as simple as possible. So you can, on your phone, just go to your browser, go to talktospot.com, look for the Yukon Human Rights Commission, or follow the link on, we talked about posters, so you can scan a QR code. So there's no app, and we want to keep it that way because people usually don't want to download an app or re-download it if they wanted to look at something. So that is very important for us, also in terms of accessibility, to make this available wherever with the lowest barrier entry and the securest way possible.
For sure. And Spot working offline, obviously it is on a browser. It's a bot working on a browser, so it's not available offline at this point. You do need an internet connection to use it. We have tested it on slower internet connections and it's worked just fine. So hopefully that's not a barrier for people to access this.
Yeah, maybe something to add there. So yes, you do need it to start it and you do need it to submit your report. Should you actually go offline while talking to Spot, that's fine. Like, it will happen in your browser. It will all stay there. It's all safe. So let's say you lost your internet connection while talking to Spot, because that's something that people are afraid of. Nothing would happen because it's all in your browser. So as long as you don't close the browser window and kind of close the window, that would delete your data. But if you keep that open until you have internet again, then you can submit it and all data is saved.
I see one last question there. So can Spot be used for documenting harassment outside of the workplace? As Daniel talked about earlier, this was originally developed as a tool specific for workplaces. So it's definitely geared towards workplace reporting. You could certainly use it to document other experiences, but some of the questions may not align perfectly that it's going to ask you. However, absolutely free to use it. It just may not be perfectly aligned to your needs. But you'll still get a PDF at the end. You'll have an opportunity to write down things like who was involved, what their role was, what your experience was, when it happened, where it happened, all of those kinds of things. So lots of the questions will apply pretty generically, but it's certainly developed as a workplace oriented tool.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think that's everything on my end. If there are no other questions, I think we can probably wrap this up. Anything else you wanted to add, Daniel, before we go?
No, just again to thank you, and if anyone has any questions, they can also directly reach out to us. As I said, hello@talktospot.com. Other than that, we're really happy about the partnership with Yukon, hope to see this continue in the future and help people to give a safe space where they can record their experiences and also have a way to raise them to the Commission.
Absolutely. And I'll just add, you can also access the Spot tool for Yukon on the Yukon Human Rights Commission website, yukonhumanrights.ca. And right in the top right corner, there's a button that says Talk to Spot. You can click on that and access the tool through there as well, if you're not on the Spot website. So a couple of ways you can access it. Thank you so much for being here, Daniel, and thanks again to Jessica for making that video, even with expecting the baby imminently. It was fabulous, a great run through using that experience of Sean from the play from earlier situation. We're super happy to be partnered with Spot and look forward to continuing to work to refine this even more and make this tool even better in the future for Yukoners. So thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.